we talk to marketing firms, advertising firms, they say, they're very business oriented. So they say, well, what's your unique value proposition? Right. And so I tell them, I said, well, where we differ, what is unique about us is the way we approach our clients and the practice, and that we're not case managers. We don't have case managers. And the response I get all the time is, yeah, but does that really resonate with the individual, consumer? And I say, I don't know if it does or it doesn't, but it needs to, for Christ's sakes. Welcome to Above the Legal Limit. I'm your host, Justin Chopin, business owner, lawyer, dad, world's best husband, traveler, and adventure seeker. On this podcast, we mix business with pleasure. We'll dive into growth strategies, entrepreneurial adventures, the business of law, and prove that business isn't boring. So let's get ready because we are going above the legal limit. Welcome to the show. I've got a special guest today, Nick Asprodites. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So every now and then, we bring someone from the inside, and we like to, bring them on the show to give a little insight to the business, behind the operation. And Nick's that guy. Nick is our director of operations at the Chopin Law Firm. So, yes. This is a new role for us. It used to be that I was the director, and Nick joined us last year, and so now he's the director. So everyone says, Justin, what do you do? And my answer usually is, I don't know. I know I'm very busy, but I don't know that I actually do anything. Nick does everything. So Nick, tell us about, how that works as being a director.
Sure. I'm certainly not doing everything. You're doing a lot. But I think one of the cool things about working here is that the firm is in this critical stage of its growth, and growing businesses, scaling businesses, it energizes me. And the energy here and the culture here is, we're moving towards growing the firm and taking kind of the next chapter of the firm. And a lot of it's coming in, evaluating the current systems, trying to define the current systems, and locking those in and creating more scalable systems. That's what a lot of my day-to-day is. And so a lot of it's thinking about what's going on here, trying to capture what's going on here, not all of its on paper. And that sounds easy. It's harder than it looks, because it's sometimes it's difficult to figure out what's happening on a day-to-day basis in the back of house of a business.
Right. Well, and it's never the same thing. I'm never doing the same thing 2 days in a row. I know you never do the same thing 2 days in a row.
Right.
But I agree. You know what? There is an energy. Everyone here gets excited. So that's what I like about it. We still get excited when the phone rings and it's like a new customer. We're like the whole place, everyone, the energy is there. Everyone's excited about it. And that makes for kind of a fun, active place to work, I think.
Sure.
It's easy for me to say that because, I own it. So,
right. That part of the culture, though, was apparent and obvious the day I walked in the door, that there's really this customer-facing, client-facing culture, and everybody's really invested in kind of delivering a great client experience, and that was great to see. Well, on day one.
That's interesting, because when we talk to marketing firms, advertising firms, they say, they're very business oriented. So they say, well, what's your unique value proposition? Right. And so I tell them, I said, well, where we differ, what is unique about us is the way we approach our clients and the practice, and that we're not case managers. We don't have case managers. And the response I get all the time is, yeah, but does that really resonate with the individual, consumer? And I say, I don't know if it does or it doesn't, but it needs to, for Christ's sakes.
Right. No, I think that's their job. Figure that out.
Right.
Figure out how to connect, get clients to understand what that means. But to be totally honest, when we were going through the interview process, you mentioned some of that stuff, and before you get on the inside, it's like, okay, well, maybe everybody says that. I don't really know if it's a no case manager firm, but that is not BS.
No,
there's
the
real
other firms out there they're not real, right? There are law firms out there that are like a dollhouse. Like, when my kid had this like cutout sort of dollhouse, there's nothing really. It looks like a school building, but there's nothing behind it. Right. It's fake. Or you have dinosaurs. Those old law firms that are just in the dark ages with paper files, but being somewhere in between. Really, we're not dinosaurs, but we're not fake. We're real. We're a real place with real people. It is what makes us unique. I'm always reminded of this really cheesy movie in the 80s that I don't know the name of, but it's Dudley Moore and Daryl Hannah, and they're in an insane asylum, and they get hired to do the advertising. And one of the I can't, do you know what I'm talking about? I don't know.
I don't.
One of the and it's like big, like Delta, or like AT&T or something
Massive
like that,
client.
and it's like a massive client, and their slogan is, we're AT&T and we're tired of your crap. You're like, they're too big to fail. Like, they don't have to worry about the customer experience, right? Now I need to go find that movie and watch it. It's hilarious, or it was, back then. So I don't know. It's unfortunate that there's not a better way to communicate to the general population that's like what you're seeing in mainstream media and advertising on these businesses is not reality. The reality is there is a warehouse somewhere in Colombia of people answering phones. There is a warehouse, in the Philippines of people, setting up files and operating as case managers.
Right.
And maybe there's a couple of lawyers out there allegedly clicking the boxes and signing the documents and, and sort of pretending to practice law. That's who you're hiring.
Right.
But, well, I've just pissed off the entire market, so that's fine.
Right.
They'll,
But it's more difficult to operate this way. It's more difficult to have attorneys really doing the work, attorneys doing the heavy lifting as far as client relations, as far as communicating with their client. Everyone's extremely busy.
Right. So if you have 150 clients and your goal is I want to talk to every client, once a week, you're never going to be able to practice law because you're going to be that goal then becomes nearly impossible. So you're right. I mean, to balance the obligation on the individual case, your familial obligations, and then the overarching obligation to be, available to your clients is a challenge. It is a challenge, but the reward, I think, is there if you can do it. And so we're not perfect, go check our Google reviews. I always laugh because they're out there. There are a couple of bad ones. You can go read them. There are instances. Some of them are crazy. They're like the guy asking for money for donuts. But then some are just like, well, you didn't call me back. But so we can never deliver 100%. What I like about what we do, I like about our business is that we try new things. We are always self-reflecting on what can I do better, where did this derail, how can we do better, and I think we deliver on that, by and large. I was just on a podcast with another gentleman recently where we discussed AI and AI tools, and it's particularly relevant for us because you were helping us build out this sort of AI. There's AI out there that will put together demand letters.
Right.
And what's funny about it is when you go through all this trouble, you're negotiating with the vendor, you're getting all the information to the vendor so we can get a test run.
Right.
And then what happens? What did the lawyers say?
Well, we're not, they don't want it. I don't know what else to say. I mean, they can't envision it really working for them at the price point that the products that the vendor's currently charging. And we've discussed this. We probably discuss this weekly. What's going on with AI?
Right.
The economics of it, where the economics going to be in 2 to 3 years. They're not going to be where they are now.
No,
This stuff's incredibly overpriced, I think, for the ROI. There really is no ROI.
no, you're not. The return is time, I suppose. But
Right.
what was interesting was, so we sent it out to the trial lawyers here, like the main. Everyone here is a trial lawyer, but like the main guys,
Sure.
right? One says, I don't think that I would say, because it spits out right like a 25-page demand with like disability ratings, like you're in Florida or something, and he says, I don't think that that's the right way to settle a case like this. That's not what
Right.
I wouldn't do that. And I think that that's fascinating because, the information, the noise we're getting is I'm getting told that I'm moving around. Am I gesticulating too much? Oh, you're okay. The noise that we're hearing it's revolutionary. Right. It's going to change your practice. It's the future, right? And I'm just this naysayer in the back of the room, while everybody nods and smiles and applauds and jumps up and down. And I'm just sitting there thinking, or you could just sit down and write a freaking demand letter and
Right.
put some feeling into it. Really let the other lawyer know that you feel passionately about this case.
Right.
And
No, you're right there. To hear a seasoned, well-trained, intelligent attorney say, this just doesn't fit with how I practice law. I think there's a better way to get results for the client. That was eye-opening.
yeah, I mean, his solution was pick up the phone and talk to the other lawyer.
Right.
Right. I love it. I love it because
Right.
That's fine. Like we're not going to cram this stuff down anyone's throat. I was talking to another lawyer who will remain nameless about their law firm, and their law firm just went all in on like very sophisticated software that absolutely does not fit their business model. And so, you and I live in this world, right? So we're constantly, on Zoom meetings with vendors.
Right.
It's like, right, it's probably like 20%. 20% of the job is being sold to and being able to cherry pick. I'm like, does this have value and does that not have value? Or does it have value, but I'm not paying for that? Or does it have value, but not for us? This is one of those where it has value, but not for them. And so I was like, well, what is the software? And they tell me the name. And I almost fell out of my chair laughing because you can't treat every law firm the same.
Right.
Right. So the operations for a nationwide defense firm and the operations for a regional plaintiffs firm could not be more dissimilar.
Right.
So it's interesting that we spend so much of our time trying to buy back time that we're out of time. We've run out of time for the day.
I do feel an obligation to stay abreast of AI, the industry, how it's developing, where it's going, because like we've discussed, 2 to 3 years from now, the capabilities of the product will probably be, vastly different. The economics will be different. So we need to keep our finger on the pulse. But as of now, we are finding it's not the best fit.
Right. And cost is really a big thing too, right? Because you've been pricing some of these out. If you really were to implement all of these different lines of AI, and it's like silly even calling it that. It's just software.
Sure.
Right? It's stupid to be like, AI. It's just, if you were to buy all this different software, like what do you think that would even cost for, because it's all annual, right? That's the deal. All software vendors now,
Right.
they want their cash up front. I think we would be investing hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's all experimental. It's all beta, right? So
100%.
So, right. So you want me to, I should be, if I'm investing in your software, then like I should be treated like an investor, right? Like I want a stake in this game. And if I'm giving you $100,000 for your experimental software, if I'm like your first buyer, then I want, hey, where's my cut? I want a percentage. And I feel that way. It's not, there's so many of them. So we were at this, marketing seminar, and I think there was a spreadsheet with maybe 30 different vendors that'll do everything, right? This one's going to listen to your phone calls and transcribe it. This one's going to summarize your depositions. This one's going to not just listen to the phone calls, but will actually prompt the people on the phone, like, I don't know how that works, like, don't forget to get his phone number.
Right.
Right. It's all experimental software. My position, and I think I'm going to start screaming it from like the rooftop, that it's all bullshit. And if you just hibernate for 2 years, you're going to be getting this stuff for free.
I think you're right. I absolutely think you're right. I think also when you talk to these vendors, they don't really know how to price this stuff. Everybody's trying to figure this out right now, including them. And so that was one of the that's one of the unique aspects of dealing with these products, is that typically, you go buy a car, there's a hard price. It's somewhat negotiable, but they understand exactly what that car costs, and you have an obligation to yourself to negotiate as close as you can get to their cost. They don't really, these AI products, they don't really know, because everything's based on usage. There's no one rate. You're constantly negotiating, even with products that you're already using. When they add some AI component, you have to renegotiate. It's a kind of a strange experience.
It's like buying a Honda 30 years ago, right? Or where they were like, you get a box on wheels.
Right.
Now, if you want, you want cruise control? Okay. Yeah. Hey, look. Yeah. Listen, moneybags. We can do that. That's fine. You want a cigarette lighter? Floor mats. You want that spoiler on the back, man? That's okay. All right. Yeah. Right. It's they tell you about all the things it can do, and then you're like, all right, well, show it to me. Right. They're like, oh, we don't have that model here. We've got the spoilerless, cigarette lighterless, floor matless, non-cruise controlled, stick shift, Honda version.
Right. So anyone out there vetting these products, make sure the salesperson demand that they demonstrate the product working.
Well, and that's actually an interesting point. We've learned now over the last several months of this, they'll have their dummy, product for you, and
that's ready to go.
Right, and it's not, So we did so this is how we do it, right? So if you're vetting these, I like your idea. This is how we did it. We sent them a case.
Yes.
Right, and so we show us your product on this case. And it was you and me and Phil, one of my partners, and we were on the Zoom call, and he brings it up, and man, he's so excited. He's so Jones. He was like, this is going to be game changing. And I look at it, and it says, this particular software is a woman walks into a Dunkin' Donuts. Right off the bat, I thought, that's weird. Because, there's one Dunkin' Donuts for like 100 miles from here. And I was like, all right, we got a Dunkin' Donuts case. Okay. I didn't realize that. I like their coffee. If I'd known, I would have gone out there, and gotten a donut and coffee, my two favorite things. And so this happened and that happened. And says, all right, well, Phil, what do you think of this? He's like, well, there's just one problem. So what's that? He goes, well, this is a trucking case where she got rear-ended by an 18-wheeler. Right. Oh, well, that is a big problem. Why is that? Oh, I don't think we ever got an answer on that.
Right. Because they didn't use their preset model, and the salespeople don't know how the model works. So they don't know to ask. They don't know to make sure that we provide. If you do it our way, where we send them the information because we want to see what it looks like with a file that we have that we're already familiar with, they don't know to ask you for this information or that information. So the AI model defaults to some cases they use to train it, and has nothing to do with our file.
So it's a lot like, or a little like the everyone's talked about it, the chat GPT lawyer. That's what they call him. The poor guy up in the Northeast who submitted a brief citing a case directly on point. The only problem with it is it never existed.
Yes.
It was, so we have this, there's, when you do, you like go to school to be like a trial lawyer, right? So there'll be these fake cases. And you create a fake case because you want to have something that's like perfectly balanced with all the different elements. And so it's easier to just create a case out of, thin air than it is to like try to find the right one. And so a very common one's called Potter v. Schrackle, right? So it's like a very homely woman's crossing the street, and a guy, who works for, he's on the job, and he plows her over and kills her. And, that's the case, right? Okay. Is she in the crosswalk? Is she not in the crosswalk? Is he on the job? Is he not on the job? And so it is a test case designed for trial lawyers to sort of hone those broad skills on, how to argue effectively to a court or a jury. Right. So if you're just running it in the background, you could be like, hey, there's this case that's 100% on point. It's called Potter v. Schrackle, Judge. Look it up. Right. I can't imagine a more embarrassing thing to say, right? So anybody who's ever been in like a NEDA trial program, they know this case. Everyone's talked about it, like Potter v. Schrackle. So if you're using a large language model, there's no way to know where the information is coming from.
Right.
I actually think it's when you dial it to the practice, which is not where where you live, but when you dial it to the practice, I think it's a reflection on today's style of litigation. 40 years ago, right? A recent decision could be within the last 10 years of when you're arguing, or 5 years. In 20 years ago, maybe you get a few years. In today's practice, a recent decision would be weeks, months, this year, last year. It is a relentless way to practice law. I think it is one of the reasons that lawyers can quickly become burnt out and disillusioned with litigation. It's because much like everything else, right? So the practice of law also lives, in the immediate and the now, right? And so you're almost obligated to know that 6 months ago the court ruled, XYZ way, whereas 40 years ago that wouldn't have even been published yet.
Sure.
So likewise, these large language models and things like that, it sort of fits into that new style of like, I will download the internet and I will review the entirety of the World Wide Web and then spit you out an answer. Unfortunately, it's all fake.
Right.
But
to speak to something you said earlier, these products buy time back. Okay. But one part of the equation that I don't think gets talked about is who are you buying time back from? So referencing, if you have a warehouse in Colombia and you're buying, that's totally different than buying time back from a highly skilled attorney. So if you're this law firm and a highly skilled attorney is doing the real work, which is what happens here, the AI needs to be unbelievably capable. And it's just... The products are not even close.
Because they're unbelievably capable.
Right.
Right. One of the lawyers gave me his motion. He's like, you want to read this? I was like, no. Do I need to? Right. He goes, no. I was like, okay, well, no, you've been practicing law a really long time. I don't think I need to look at that. And then one of the other lawyers said, did you read his motion? I said, no. Do I need to? They said, it's amazing. I was like, oh, well, good. Well, no, I don't want to read it. I don't want to read it. But And I think that I agree, it's like, why are we buying back time? Like, what is the end goal here? Is the end goal to free up time to work on more cases? Okay. So that actually has a value.
Right.
Is it because you're not skilled and I'm going to compensate your lack of skill through the use of technology. And that, I think, is where our competitors are using this software. And it's also where they're getting into trouble, right? So the best example, which I have no qualms with talking about, is MMA. So everyone in this market, in the Gulf Coast, has heard of MMA. They were hurricane damage lawyers, probably about to get sued. Well, you know what? They're in bankruptcy. So they're hurricane lawyers that their error came down to systems operations. So they took on an enormous caseload. Numbers you wouldn't even be able to fathom. Thousands and thousands and thousands of cases.
Right.
Their costs are in the millions. And you know, as well as I do, now that, as we have continued to grow our firm and we help more clients, we are stretched a little bit more thin. But because of our unique value proposition, we will not allow that customer experience and result to get watered down. Like, we're not going to allow that here. And so we are constantly tinkering with that. In their instance, they took on this huge caseload, this huge docket, and said, we will employ software that's going to allow us to do more with less. And it didn't work.
Right.
I mean, there are a multitude of other problems. We don't need to get into the ethics issues and all the nonsense and the competency issues. None of that's important. What's important here from a systems perspective is, where can it go wrong? Well, it goes wrong when you forget at the core every file that walks across, especially in hurricane work, every single file on our desk, that was someone's house.
Right.
Kids lived there. It was in a neighborhood. He owned a grocery store. She taught at the preschool. These are real people with real homes. And if you allow that, relationship with the client to get watered down and eroded, then you replace, you replace yourself, your hard work, with software, you've lost.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah. So, I think that there's value out there, but I don't think you can replace hard work, and the human spirit, if you want to be like philosophical about it.
Right.
And that shows up. I think one of the better arguments I made, a long time ago was, I was telling this federal judge on this horrible discrimination case, one of the worst instances of discrimination fathomable. And the judge was about to derail the entire case. And I mean, essentially, I'm pleading with the judge to deny them their day in court is every bit as hurtful as the discrimination was itself. There's morality here that they cannot be denied this opportunity. But that is where the getting from the business into the lawyer, that's where the software for the business is nice and fine, but it can't replace emotion and thought and investment, like investing with your mind. Like when we have a big case, right? I'm like in the shower thinking about it all day long. I'm sleeping thinking about, Michael, how can I possibly convince, not even just convince, how can I convey the true horror that has befallen on this individual to 9 people? Like, what is the best way to truly make them understand this person's experience? And you can't do that with a bot. I'm getting the wrap up hands. So, Nick, thanks for joining us on the show. Thanks for all the hard work you do here. Operations is not always, actually I was going to say it's not always sexy, but you know what? That's actually not true, because I'm the worst. I'll be like, hey, Nick, we should do X, Y, Z. And then I'm just in the background doing it. And Nick's like, did you want me to do that? Or, which is because I'm a control freak. But it is because it's interesting, and there are a lot of these moving parts. I'm like, well, maybe if we, adjust this here, and then we can do this here. So there are fun elements to it that I really enjoy. But I suspect from your perspective, it may be a thankless job. But I'm very glad that you're here and helping me out, because it used to be me, right? And I, so
right. No, it's good to be here, and this is fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me today on Above the Legal Limit. If you enjoyed the show and you want to hear more about business and law, hit that subscribe button. If you didn't like the show, keep it to yourself. Remember, there's no limit to what we can achieve. We will see you next week. Until then, even though we're above the legal limit, let's drive safely. Cheers, everyone.